Welcome to the Poirot Detective Show, where today we're about to unveil a shocking mystery. And our star is, oh dear, not again, it's a body. As Poirot and Hastings walked past the manor gate, they stumbled upon a certain someone lying on the ground. It was Maggie. Now, Poirot's head was spinning. Apparently the killer was aiming for Nick, but oops, Maggie wore the wrong cape and got caught in the crossfire. If that's the case, then the culprit must be lurking in the crowd at the party. Poirot pondered, who's pulling the strings here? Poirot ordered for Maggie to be rushed to the hospital and told the police that they better let him oversee things who dares to act without his permission. After leaving, Hastings reluctantly informed Poirot that the police suspect a madman. Poirot merely scoffed at this idea. No matter how shabby this manor was, it wasn't an open house. Poirot stood firm, declaring that the murderer was definitely someone close to The next morning, Poirot found Hastings again, and after a sleepless night pondering, he was teetering on the edge of insanity. He raised 3 questions, and it seemed that Hastings was not yet the detective assigned to this case. Although Hastings' answers seemed reasonable, they were complete nonsense for this case. Did Maggie really just lose her clothes, or was there something more? Poirot decided it was time to dig deeper, so he hurried over to Nick. When he arrived at Nick's, he was hit with a shocking revelation. Nick had been losing sleep over his fiancée, not his cousin's death. To make things even funnier, the fiancé was none other than the super-rich Mike from last night's dinner, a real unlucky fellow. The report said Mike was piloting a private jet when he mysteriously vanished, and everyone was convinced Ted kicked the bucket. However, Nick was absolutely positive his love was still alive until the fateful phone call changed everything. This even explained why Nick swapped the fiery red cloak for a plain white shawl. It was his silent tribute. As for why their love was kept under wraps, it was mainly because the rich Uncle Mike had always looked down on Nick. What a mess. They thought that once married, they'd be free to be together, only for a twist of fate to complicate everything. In fact, Nick initially hesitated to share the truth with Poirot, since the loss of his fiancée left him heartbroken. Yet after much deliberation, he found the courage to connect the dots, and Poirot had an epiphany. If Mike had indeed left her while leaving all to his fiancée, then the killer's target wasn't the manor, it was that insane fortune. This also explained why the killer tried so many times to eliminate Nick. Now it was time to confirm whether there will even exist. If the beneficiary was Nick, that person could very well be the killer. However, when Poirot and Hastings hurried to verify, they encountered George on the way. Poirot casually mentioned to George that Nick had a fiancée, hoping to gauge his reaction, and just like that, George was off the suspect list. That day, Freddie strolled by, asking George for that always broken watch, and Hastings spotted it right away. He remembered that the watch ran just fine, so why was it being repaired? Freddie feebly defended that it was the clasp on the strap that was broken. Poirot had a nagging feeling something was off with the watch, but he brushed it aside and ran to Nick's study to find clues. While he didn't find the will, Poirot stumbled upon 2 unexpected discoveries. The first was a letter addressed to Mike, and Poirot immediately guessed that she was into some drugs. The timestamp on the letter was from last February, meaning she had known about Nick and her relationship for ages. Additionally, the manor had an old hidden compartment where important things used to be kept, but Poirot couldn't figure out its exact location. After failing to find anything else, they decided to check the bedroom, and lo and behold, they found Nick and Mike's love letters. Poirot hesitated at first, but ultimately thought, why not? This could be the key clue. The mood was suddenly upbeat, thanks to those kind souls. Now evidence is solid, the killer sought Mike's vast fortune. Why treat Nick like this? Now it was all about figuring out who stood to gain the most from Nick's death. He might just be the killer. Logically speaking, since Nick mentioned leaving the manor to his cousin Charles, and Mike referenced it in his letter, Charles seemed the most but after some inquiries, Charles claimed he had never received any letters from Mike and didn't buy Nick's will. Now this was puzzling. Poirot had previously asked Nick, and he had spoken quite confidently. To unravel the truth, Poirot and Hastings quickly found the visiting gentleman, and the answers they got left them speechless. Subtitles. The cousin even pretended he hadn't received those letters. Was there some clue Poirot failed to notice? Just when the case hit a deadlock, the hospital ran with some bad news. Nick was on the brink, and Poirot rushed to the hospital, but sadly arrived too late. He had died from a box of chocolates signed by Poirot, clearly a devious trap set by the killer. This was all meant to let Nick lower his guard and willingly eat the poisoned candy, leaving Poirot utterly disheartened. But he couldn't just give up, not only for the sake of his detective reputation, but also to avenge Nick. Next day, Poirot got in touch with the staff at the care home, and they revealed a crucial detail. It turned out that on the day of the murder, Nick received 2 identical boxes of chocolates, one clearly sent by Poirot, the other completely nameless. Because Nick trusted Poirot, he chose to eat that box, and just like that, he lost his life.